We are on live.
All right. And Beth, are you muting everybody who's not?
No, I'm going to ask you to mute yourselves, please.
All right, great. Well, welcome everybody to Wine and Chocolate, part of our annual fundraiser. I'm Jacqueline Sheehan. I'm the founder and host of Writers Night Out. So Straw Dog, for most of you, I don't know most of you know this, but we have been around for 12 years. And Writers Night Out is the younger sister of all of that. We started 10 years ago. Ellie Maripol and I were scouring downtown looking for a place to be, and just happened by accident almost to go into the 11s, which is no longer there, but it's where Deals and Steals is right now. And they had a huge space, entertainment space with lights and a stage and a bar. And we were there for about 4 or 5 years until we had to depart because the owners sold. But we knew that Straw Dog had to provide something for writers to be together. That was really what we discovered that writers wanted. Almost as much as being published, we want to be with other writers. And it was important for us to find a space where writers could share their work and they could be with each other. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and I knew I needed an MC. I knew I needed those kind of people who like to be in front of a mic, and boy, did I find them. So our very first MC, who's with us tonight, is Nyla Morera. And let me mention a few of our other MCs. Chris O'Carroll, Giovanna Van Pelt, Ed Orzechowski, Joshua Michael Stewart, and our current MC, Rick Parr, is with us tonight. So I am going to ask each of our MCs to talk about their experience with Writers Night Out, what it has meant to them, what their experience of it was. We will have a special performance by our very own Chris O'Carroll. And at any time during Wine and Chocolate, you can make a donation. So here's the plug. You can make a donation to Straw Dog Writers. There is a link going into the chat right now. And if you don't want to, for whatever reason, to go to the link, you can make a pledge in the chat and direct it to Becky Jones, and Becky will take that pledge and count it toward our total. So right now, I would like to introduce Nyla. Nyla was our very first MC, and we really created the format of Writers Night Out together. And Nyla and I just happened to meet at the writer's room in Forbes Library, but I knew that she just had such a wonderful presence. She had a love of writing, and I knew she was the best choice for an MC. But Nyla, would you talk to us about being the MC?
Sure. Thank you, Jacqueline. Yeah, so I started with Writers Night Out 10 years ago now in 2012. I'd only been in Northampton for a couple of years, so it was really fortuitous and lovely to meet Jacqueline at the writer's room in the Forbes Library and to get her gracious invitation to be the first MC at Writers Night Out. So at that time, Writers Night Out was only an open mic, and the room was this big, airy, kind of gritty room with black walls and these tiny little glaring stage lights and a low platform stage. And the bar felt like it was a million miles away at the other side of the room, and sort of around the corner and on the other side, there was the restaurant, which was sometimes still going when we got there. And there were these, dark little hallways leading to the bathrooms, and it was always cold because the heat couldn't keep up with the room. So I would walk in, I would always get a gin and tonic. I'd settle down on one of the tables up front. We'd get everybody's names and pop them into a hat to pick the order. And as MC, I used to try to always listen for something in each person's piece that I could reflect back at them and enjoy and kind of comment on. And I think that was a really nice thing for us. I think people really enjoyed hearing their work reflected back, and I think also it gave other people in the room a little chance to reflect on what they'd just heard. So I thought that ended up being a really nice part of my experience. But in general, Writers' Night Out, I remember a lot of the regulars. I won't name them, but it really helped bring me a literary community really early in my move to Northampton. So, we had the dim lighting and the weird little makeshift stage that all gave it this kind of scrappy urban vibe that I think felt very fitting for kind of starting writers struggling along together. So eventually I moved with Writers' Night Out to the basement, which was much cozier and more intimate. I just want to mention. I know we talked about this when we were planning for this event, but how much we owe to Jacqueline for being kind of the power behind the throne. She did all of the unsung work of planning. We started with a featured reader. She contacted all the featured readers and invited people. She did all the publicity and the bits and pieces that have kept this going the whole time. So we owe a ton to Jacqueline. At the basement, I kept drinking that favorite gin and tonic. It had, it had better couches and a better bar. And during that stage, I finally sort of graduated from being the MC and ended up being a featured reader. So, kind of made it to real writerhood myself. And I remember when I was no longer MC, being able to sit in a big cuddle puddle with a bunch of other writers on the couch and listening to other people read. And that was a nice moment for me. So, becoming a featured reader after all those years as MC was a real milestone for me in my writing life. And since then, I've published a couple of poetry chapbooks. I'm expecting my new middle grade novel out next year. I'm working on edits now, so it's coming out in 2023. So I'm really grateful to Writers' Night Out and to Straw Dogs for kind of accompanying me on this journey and being a literary community for me. And I don't make it to Writers' Night Out very often anymore, but I hope life will settle down and I'll be able to do that again. So it's such an important organization for us occasionally lonely writers. So if you haven't donated yet, I'm going to be doing so immediately after I speak. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Nyla. Thank you very much. I wanted to say that one of the favorite things about Writers' Night Out when we met in person is that we would have the open mic, 10 readers get to read for 5 minutes each, and then we would take a break. And it was during that break that writers would meet each other. They could share with each other what they liked about what they heard. And also many writing groups were formed during those breaks. People looking for partners to write with or groups to write with. So that's a part that we have missed with Zoom. I'm so grateful to Zoom that we were still able to meet, but I missed so much that little tiny 10-minute break that so many things happened during that time. I would like to introduce our current MC, Rick Parr. We were trying to remember how long Rick has been MC. He's been totally at the basement, and people have varying appraisals of the basement, but I like the basement. Okay. And yeah. And so Rick is our current MC. And Rick, talk to us about what it's been like for you.
Well, let me give you a little warm up before that. I was trained as a clinical psychologist. I got my PhD in 1980, and went into that profession for a while. And then I decided I wanted to teach, whereupon you have to write academic articles, which are ugly. But I liked writing. I just didn't like what I wrote. And about 20 years ago, I got really tired of all the academic stuff, although I kept my job. And I had a meeting, well, it was like every few weeks. So we'd get together with a friend of mine who had some nice success with his writing. And we were sitting having a beer or 12. And we're talking about things. I had a little secret. He had a little secret. I was doing divorce mediations. He wouldn't know how to get divorced. I would tell him. And I said, now I got to ask you, how do you write? He took a sip of his beer and he went like this. He said, took a sip of beer. You understand? I said, yeah, first of all, you have to sit down and do it. And he goes, right. Then you follow the story. And he suggested I go to this, the Stone Coast Writers Conference they had up in Maine for a 10-day thing. And I was absolutely hooked. I loved it. When I came back, I just started writing my butt off, but I had nowhere to go with this. You read it by yourself and you go, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Or no, it sucks. It's, oh, great. Oh, no, it stinks. So finally, I started going to open mic nights. And the first of which was up in Wendell at the Deja Brew, which I loved. It was just a dinky little place in a dinky little town. And it was closed down, of course. And then I went to Greenfield, and then I went to East Hampton. And I finally thought, oh my God, you got something in Northampton. I lived down near Springfield. So I would come up regularly and was in love with the place from the first time I walked in, with the sticky ass floors and just the grunginess of it was just terrific. And I loved the people there, and I made good friends. And I love that. I'm redundant on the word love. It felt like everybody was in the same game. We were all trying to write something that was good, though we needed an audience. And here was the audience already built in. And people were so unbelievably supportive. I remember the first time I got up, I put my hands on the podium and I felt like I left enough water to stock with trout or something. I was just nervous as hell and felt silly and stupid. And my tendency is to speak way too fast. And I read, 5-minute thing that probably was like 30 pages, just like that. But nobody cared. And then when Jacqueline was talking about the 10-minute breaks between the readers and the feature reader, that was the best. It was somebody would come up and unsolicitedly say, I love that, or hey, way to go, or something. And it felt just like a kind of a home. And I just enjoyed the hell out of it. I especially enjoyed Nan, our bartender, who should get full credit here for be a nice host. It also got to the point where I would have students who were just really rotten students. They would never come to class, but they were very good writers. And I started to threaten them, air quotes. I don't threaten, but I would kind of pretend I was threatening them. Said, you're never going to graduate unless you come to Writers' Night Out and read what you've done. And they go, I can't do that. And I said, you have to. And then finally they'd come up and they crushed it, but they didn't know they crushed it because they were, they're doing like we did, be in the room and write and not have an audience. And at that break, that 10-minute break, people would come up to them, pat them on the shoulder and say, that was wonderful. Like, come back, Rarely did they, but I loved that they came up and did that. Everybody who writes has a shared fears. Everybody who writes needs support. And that's what the open mic nights have given me. I guess the last thing I'd say, I think we tend to denigrate ourselves because we're local. But the writing that I hear, the stories that I hear, and the poems that I hear are as good as anywhere, better than almost anywhere. And I think it's time we kind of understood that we are good, very good, excellent, in fact. And that's about it. So thank you for having this. I'm glad you guys put this together 10 years ago. It changed my life, actually. So thanks.
Thank you, Rick. I wanted to say something about what Nyla mentioned that I totally forgot. I couldn't remember what started me having one gin and tonic every time Writers' Night Out, and I guess it was Nyla. But yeah, thank you, Rick, for talking about the quality of writing in Western Massachusetts and the people who choose to come to Writers' Night Out. I am always blown away. I am always blown away by the open mic part and by the featured readers. I want to say, before I introduce Chris O'Carroll, is that a community member has donated a $5,000 matching donation so that every dollar that is donated up to $5,000 will be matched by this donor, which is just such a generous thing that has happened. And I'm so appreciative that this donor has done that. Chris O'Carroll, in 2020, we had a fundraiser. I cannot even explain to you why we skipped our fundraiser in 2021. COVID or something. But anyhow, in 2020, I invited Chris O'Carroll to try something. I said, Chris, I just saw something on Facebook Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, was challenged by her staff in 2 minutes to list all of her accomplishments, which were many, many, many. And she did it, and it was funny and hilarious, and she was terrific. And I said, Chris, do you think you could do that for Straw Dog? I said, we have a lot of accomplishments, and I know that people don't know about all of them. And Chris said, well, gosh, gee, I don't know. I'll give it a try. So here is our Chris O'Carroll, writer, performer, and beloved friend.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline is one of the people who made me feel welcome the first time I went to Writers' Night Out at the basement. All right. Here is a capsule history of the Straw Dog Writers Guild. In 2011, a fledgling writers group expected a modest crowd of about 30 at their first public event. They ended up welcoming 3 times that many people. The Straw Dog Writers Guild has been overachieving ever since. Today, in 2022, the group has compiled such an extensive list of accomplishments that only a fool would try reading it all in just 2 minutes or less. So they chose the right guy for the job. They have established the Abel Meerpole Social Justice Writing Award, first recipient, poet Patricia Smith, offered writing residencies at Patchwork Farm, and more recently in collaboration with the Mount, former home of Edith Wharton, awarded scholarships and internships to area high school and college students, partnered with Nicole Young to create the Emerging Writer Fellowship for Women of Color, published Compass Roads, edited by Jane Yolen, a print anthology by Straw Dog Poets, published the online anthology Pandemic Poetry and Prose, Writing in the Time of Corona, joined forces with the writers group Valley Society to promote the Black Writers Read series, hosted expert guest speakers from diverse fields, a police officer giving tips on how to write realistically about crime and detective work, a doctor discussing how to injure your characters, an actor and director sharing presentation skills to make your readings more dynamic. They have presented salons and workshops that address everything from big issues in a writer's life, do you need an MFA, to workshops about the nitty-gritty details of the writer's craft, songwriting basics, screenwriting 101, ins and outs of writing for children, writing dialogue, creating memorable characters, good storytelling in nonfiction, and so on through plays, novels, short stories, memoirs, journalism, poems, any kind of writing you care about. And they have organized 3 monthly series of prose and poetry readings where writers can share their work with an audience and network with each other. Writers' Night Out, at 10 years and counting, the longest running of the 3, has enlivened the local literary scene with 80 or more featured readers and about 1,200 spots on the open mic. There's probably a spot for you somewhere in that lineup. Most of it has been in person, and some in the last couple of years has happened online, and there is more to come. So much more, so much more. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's so little that I can say after Chris O'Carroll, but but I was going to mention those exact numbers that you mentioned, Chris, that we've had over 80 featured readers, 1,200 spots at the open mic. And, that's just an incredible number to me. Prior to our Straw Dog Writers' Night Out, there were a few poetry open mics here and there, but they really were just for poetry. And I knew that, people were writing things other than poetry as well. The poetry open mics were terrific. I don't think any of them are still going locally, but we are still going locally. And next month, Writers' Night Out is going to be in person for the first time. And we are going to be meeting at Michelson Gallery. And as the very last leg of this oh so long fundraiser, Rich Michelson has offered to give us, Straw Dog, 20% of anything that is sold in his gallery on June 7th, because that's the day that we'll be meeting. It's a wildly generous offer. I don't know how often things are sold in the gallery. I hope it's a good day for him. We are coming up to the end of our time here. Any last words from Beth, Rick, Chris, Nyla?
No,
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and all the other nights.
yeah, I agree. It's
So
been a real joy.
I have one thing to say, that we have received a $500 pledge during our time now. So
Great. That is so wonderful. That is so wonderful to get that. And you know, I'm just grateful for all the pledges that we can get. Some are little, and they're all meant with the same kind of heart and support as the big ones. They all mean the same thing. And I think right now we can start collecting names for open mic. So,
Have at it.
all righty. Okay, so I'm going to switch my view to gallery so that I can see everybody at once. And if you are interested in putting your name in the open hat, Stephen, I see you are. I'm going to put your name in right now. So what I do is I just write your name down on this little piece of paper. I scatter them all up, and then I pick 10 of them, and then our MC takes it away. KT Landon. Okay, all right. And Audrey, hi Audrey. And Finn. And Joshua, who has a new book out. Richard Horton, coming out. Richard, Sue.
Darlene's hand is up.
Okay, excuse me. I can see Maria, and I'm sorry that the other name that you mentioned, Beth, I'm not seeing that.
Darlene.
Darlene, thank you. You know, and you know who else? Are we on just two screens or just one? Because I know that Janet Alves wanted to come tonight, and we'll just hope she gets here in time. Michael Goldman, who did just such an amazing job at a reading down in Long Meadow last week. Wow. Wow, it was terrific, Michael. And Becky.
I don't want to read, but I just want to say, when I said that we'd gotten a $500 pledge, my PayPal hadn't refreshed, and we've had a number of contributions. I can't totaling about $1,500 worth in addition. So I'll have more specific numbers for you as we go along. But thank you, everyone. This is awesome.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, just keep interrupting, Becky. That's the best interruption. All right, are there other hands up? And I see our featured reader, Rebecca Olander. There's Janet. Janet, should I put your name in for open mic?
Thank you. Yes.
Janet is going to be, I can't wait to talk about her when she's our featured reader. She's going to be our featured reader in October. We're pretty much booked for the whole year. I'm going to look at page 2 here, see if I've got everybody. All right. I do think we should wait until 7 or a few minutes after for all the names.
So Becky, have we crossed the $5,000 barrier yet?
No, not quite. I don't think quite yet. I'll have the number, because I just did an estimate of what people had just now donated. So it will take me a minute to, but we're close. We're close.
Yay.
And does that mean then we get the $5,000 matching?
Yes, it does.
Excellent.
I know, it is terrific. All right, and Beth will keep putting the link in the chat so that people can see it. And as I mentioned before, if you want to contact Becky with a pledge, you can just contact Becky in the chat as well and work out how you're going to make your donation. Some people prefer to make it by check. Understandable. All right, any last takers for putting your name in the hat for Writers' Night Out?
How many do you have now, Jacqueline?
I think I have 12.
Okay.
I put my name in the hat via text to Beth, chat to Beth, I guess. I
Oh.
should have sent it to you.
And who is that? I'm sorry, I can't see who's speaking.
Cole Goodstein.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, please just raise your hand or let Jacqueline know by just unmuting yourself that you're interested in adding your name to the hat.
All right. And Rebecca Olander and I were on the radio this morning on Bill Newman's show for like a micro short amount of time for the two of us. We were on for 12 minutes. Rebecca was on Skype and I was in the studio. They had been very preoccupied with the Supreme Court issue. So it was understandable that we got a small time there. All right, Beth, I think we should probably get started. Would you like to tell the road rules?
I think everybody knows the road rules by now. Just, toggle between view, gallery view, speaker view, whatever is more comfortable for you. It's up in the upper right-hand corner. If we get bombed or anything, I'll just end the meeting, wait a minute, and then use the same link to come back on with your videos on. We should be okay. And use reactions down at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Love comments. I will be sending out the chat link. The chat log along with the videos once Ariana and I get together on getting a YouTube channel up and running. And that's about it.
Okay, all right. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who weren't here for our Wine and Chocolate, I'm Jacqueline Sheehan, and this is Writers' Night Out, sponsored by Straw Dog Writers. This also happens to be our fundraising night, and I urge you to take a look at the chat if you'd like to make a donation. There's a link, or you can contact Becky Jones directly in the chat and make a pledge. And we're well on our way with this fundraiser. So right now, I am going to pull 10 of these names, and each of you will have your 5 minutes at open mic. And then Rick will take it from there. You ready, Rick?
Yep.
Okay, number 1, Janet Alfs. Got him face down. Number 2, Richard.
Okay.
Number 3, Joshua. Number 4, Sue. Number 5, Darlene. Number 6, Audrey.
Yep.
7, Michael. Number 8, Cole, K-O-L. Number 9, K.T. Landon.
Wait a minute. Okay.
And number 10, Stephen.
And we're not at 55:05. $5,505 so far.
which is $10,505.
Yes.
Nicely done. Yay, hey.
All right. Take
Well,
it away.
okay, so you get 5 minutes, right? We got a little timer here. We also have this, which doesn't really seem to work very well, but when you're about 4.5 minutes, I'll give you a small one, and at 5 minutes, there's something larger, louder. And if it's 6 minutes, I'll call the police. I don't know, something, you got to stop. So, Janet, you are number one. Go get them.
Unmuted. Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here. Wish I could see you all in the same room, but here we are in the Zoom room. So, and congratulations on the fundraiser. That's very exciting. We can keep going with that. Thank you very much, all of you wonderful organizers. And I'm going to read one poem because I want to share a story. The poem is about artist friend of mine who I met in 2009 in Cape Town during a performing arts teaching exchange for young people that I was involved with, US, South Africa. And I met this beautiful man who talked to me because of a story I had told about a dream. And he was then inspired to approach me and say something about being a child and being afraid. And his grandmother would send him out for some eggs, and it would be dark, and he would be running through all these wooded places. And she would call out as he was going, and she would call out, "Don't worry, no matter where you are, I still see you." So I wrote a poem, and his name is Monwa Bisi. He's no longer alive, so that's part of the story also. His name is Monwa Bisi, and he introduced himself to me saying, "My name is Monwa Bisi, like Mona Lisa." So right away I thought, okay, I want to know more from this man. So we were one of the organizers of this exchange, Ingrid Askew, and I were talking about going back in 2018. So from 2009 to 2018, we thought, oh, we're going to do this project, Labyrinth Through Fear, inspired by Monwa Bisi. Well, then we found out, not long before we were going to go, that he suddenly died. So we were like, okay, well, now we really have to go to do this in honor of him. So the poem is about me walking along the coast, seeing this thing in the sand, wanting to go look at it, but also wanting to take my walk. And when I came back, it was still there. And it turns out there was a labyrinth drawn in the sand. And so I decided that Monwa Bisi, though he had died, was speaking to me. So this book is called What the Dead Want Me to Know. So Monwa Bisi wanted me to know something. So I thought, all right, I'm writing him another poem. Here's the poem. Monwa Bisi's Sankofa scarf. And Sankofa is a word from Ghana that means go back and fetch it, about needing to know where we're from. Monwa Bisi's Sankofa scarf. And the epigraph is from Liu Xiaobo. As facing the sea reveals the sky, and facing the sky reveals the sea, facing my soul reveals your soul. Monwa Bisi's Sankofa scarf. In the sand, a clump of fabric, I pass but can't forget. The pull that slows me down. Go back and fetch it. Go ahead. Monwa Bisi gestures from an ocean rock nearby. I see you. It's what we do. Sunflowers on an azure weave. Scarf. A thriving garden he swirls. Beans, pumpkins, mealies, chives in a dried up township lot. Sewed within our drumming hearts, from Guga Stebe's Isi Kosa arts to Sea Point's high-rise glitter, tourists swarming by the surf. Cape Town's gaps tear wider, like everywhere. I can't explain. Feathers shatter, bones hum, Indwe blue cranes echo, songs disperse, Ugaba, troubles swept away. As palms together, we bow, foreheads toward the ground, leaning to gather light. We follow the ones who lift us, tide and moon. It's what we do. Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's so beautiful. So beautiful. It must have been so heartbreaking not to have him in your life, going back to see him and not being there. I think this poem was a good way to describe who he was and what he meant to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, he's here.
Yeah.
He's here right now. I can feel him.
I can feel him with you. Yeah. Thank you. Richard Wayne Horton, a regular. Yay.
I've put some small experimental stories beneath titles of books that I've liked. The first one, Joseph Roth, The Emperor's Tomb. And my story is called Like Nothing. At the Duke's mansion, which is 600 years old, there are secret rooms in which faceless managers live. They are more powerful than the Duke. He is unaware of their existence. They report to the Duke's parents, who reside in Monte Carlo. The Duke, a young man, has behaved himself up to now, but on a certain evening, returning from a racing heat, he stops at a tavern. The diners stare with shocked faces. They're all wearing coachman's outfits. A waiter steps forward to invite the Duke to a basement dining room where a beautiful singer enchants him, and he falls into conversation with an amusing crowd of nonconformist artists and writers. The food is the best he's ever had, since at the ducal mansion, he finds only plain boiled things with no seasoning, on orders from his parents, who are teaching him the dreadful humility of leadership. Besotted and overstimulated, he gets into the habit of carousing often at this hideaway. Eyes that see yet are not seen trace his movements. Leaving his jolly companions one night, he walks into a blindfold and several pairs of strong hands. They take him, raving, to a keep within the mansion. Lower and yet lower, there is a secret room. 7 faceless men enter it. They sit, they say nothing, they rise, they disperse. The town wakes in the morning. Merchants make their way to cafes where they settle at small round tables. Coffee arrives. They open their newspapers, which are blank. They give each other knowing looks. No news is the news they were expecting. Nobody misreads it. At the ducal mansion, the parents arrive on foot, having walked from the station to save money, of which they have an unlimited quantity in banks everywhere in Europe. The Duke's mother says, "I like nothing about this." Her husband answers, "I too like nothing." Next one, Bram Stoker, Dracula, and my story is called No Reward, Please. After pulling the drowning child from the canal, the little man darts to one side, but warm female arms catch him, and a mother's lips smother his face. He is afraid. The respectful policeman mentions a reward. The mother's warmth makes the hero flinch back. She drags him inside her house to a chair. "Here, have this cake." Blocking his escape, she and the policeman watch, the seeing. His flesh practically smokes. He must try impotently to enjoy the treat. A piece of cake has come off on his tongue. Ugh. He looks for a corner to spit into. His sharp eyes notice the door. Out. Cries cut across his back as he flees for his non-life. These modest heroes, you understand, appear at twilight, hoping to atone in advance for less laudable pursuits later. You are advised to thank them, but refrain from touching them or trapping them. Though not fond of your cooking, they do have teeth. Your Truckle, The Last Gold of Expired Stars, and my creative nonfiction poem is called Eastern Front, 1914. As the poet ran screaming from the military hospital tent, his close-cropped head collided with a boot. 4 hanged deserters swung there, but a 5th noose was still available. Ah, too late. A soldier who was not a deserter had climbed up and was putting it around his own neck. The soldier gave the poet a "don't tell anyone" look before stepping off the plank. The poet walked back inside and found the drugs he really had been looking for.
Richard, you kill me. You kill me. I say this every single time you've read. You get more story from the fewest words, the clearest words than anybody I know. And I don't know what to say. The second one kind of made me laugh in a way. The first one reminded me of what's going on in the country, I think. I'm not sure, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to listen to you. Thank you, always. Much appreciated. Joshua.
Hello.
Hi, how you been?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good.
Hi everyone. I do have a new book coming out in September. It is called Love Something. It's a book of odes, tributes, homages, eulogies. Actually the entire book is dedicated to the Pioneer Valley, specifically to the arts and writing community. It is available for pre-order, and I will put that information in the comment section for anyone who is interested. And I will read 3 poems from this new collection. First one is entitled Writing Through Go On Bewilderment and Other Poems for Adam Grabowski. I'm lonely as a shelter in place order. Everyone dips into my tip jar heart and pockets a few sticky pennies when they think no one's watching. I stare at my butt imprint on the bed's edge and breathe to life a ghost crying in her hands, begging me not to leave her. Adam, I won't need a typewriter. I scrawl all my poems in charcoal on the sidewalk in front of your door. Hard rain washes the gray slabs clean as if they were feet of saints. The suicidal social worker with her mustard yellow cough hopes silence stops chirping in her mind's tangled branches. If I had known her kiss would drag me to the nearest balcony and dangle me over the railing by my ankles, I would still have gladly parted my lips. I am motherfucker. I am the least likely, which means I am the most likely. Your perception is the one found twirling the murder weapon in its hands. I am the child abandoned at the edge of a family's dark woods. The 3-legged dog chained to the cruel winter of man. Am I a wolf in sheep's clothing? I am the lamb bouncing on your bed with its wool on fire. I've spent my life as a deaf rooster who thinks he's a canary. I've mapped out the scars on countless bodies, the healing more painful than the wound. I've embraced fathers afraid for their sons because they know the comforts of sleeping in the monster's arms. I put all my faith into gamblers who lose every hand to God and devil only to realize the game's solitaire. I am a scarecrow who yearns for the company of crows, which is why I come to you, blade to thumb, seeking kinship, refuge under your wings. And the last short poem is titled Jane Kenyon. There's a warm hand on my chest as I read one of her poems, the one where she's 10, looking up at clouds, Timothy a halo where she lies. a hand presses, and everyday bird songs fly over her. A life touches life long after the laws of the physical world play their role. I read one of her poems in a cloth-footed bathtub in a dark house. A hand moves up to my head, pushes it underwater. And when breath is worth fighting for, but so easy to let go, the hand raises me into baptism's iridescent gasp. Thank you.
Oh my God. I missed you. I missed the images. I missed the cadence. Missed the word choice. Missed the word choices. Man, when's your book come out? You said
In September,
okay.
but it's open for pre-order now.
Okay.
I'll put the link in the notes. People can check it out. You can pre-order it for $9 rather than its regular sale price of $15. And there's also additional sample poems you can read on the page.
Yeah, boy, that was just terrific. The
Thank
idea
you.
of the charcoal on the sidewalk, just that got me. I don't know why. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sue. Thank you. Sue. It's you.
Hi, everyone. It's my first time here. Glad to be here.
Well, then welcome.
Thank you.
This won't be your last.
I hope not.
No, guaranteed.
I'm not sure how long this is time-wise, but I think I'll have time to read 3 poems. This first poem is called Genuine Risk, and it's about the day in the hospital where my mom was dying. I was 14, and the Kentucky Derby was on all the TVs in the oncology unit.
Perfect
And
timing.
I'm actually writing a book called 55 Poems, because she died when she was 55, and I started writing them when I was 55. And there'll be 55 poems. Genuine Risk. You and Genuine Risk raced toward the finish line Saturday, May 8th, 1980. High stakes, crappy odds, a sure thing. Still, I couldn't watch. I had no choice but to listen. A seated sentry, lost on blue vinyl, stationed at your hospital door. Horses sweat, jockeys silks, helmets, spires, retractable wings. 80 frogs, 80 shoes, 40 irons, girths. Runners, reins, stands, and blinkers. Cushion, pad, base, and sub. 4 inches of sandy loam, harrowed by pulling teeth. Mouthing hope, I wondered, who will be my mother now? You asked me to your bedside. I rose and walked, startled by your request. In a hoarse whisper, you said, "Come closer," and I leaned toward the rail. "I love you," you said. "I love you too," I said. You paused, then closed your eyes. When I returned to my post, I heard a chorus of patient televisions mounted on patient walls. I left your room in my mind, caught by the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. The Kentucky Derby, the run for the roses. I loosened the reins and let you go, all out, hands down. I watched you wither. By Sunday, all bets were off. We could only track conditions. Before losing, you said, "I'm sorry, and I'll never know why." Sorry to die? Sorry to lie? That Mork and Mindy Thursday night, ABC, Season 3, Episode 26, The Way Mork Were. ABC, all because of cancer, you rose from the couch. I have to go. Dad got your coat, helped put it on, and led you through the door I opened. You turned at the gate, looked back and said, "Don't worry, I'll be home soon." That was the last time I saw you standing. Even Mork knew Earthlings need to talk about their problems with people they love. You died 5 days later, May 5th, 1980. Genuine Risk won the race that year, rare for a filly to trophy the gold. We had no champion in our race. I was 14, schooling, far too green to run. Damn, you were saddled, 55, far too young to concede. No winner's circle, no garland of roses. The only rose was my middle name. I will not watch the Kentucky Derby ever again. Lay odds on that.
Oh, wow, thank you. Thank you, thank you. That's a great first reading here.
Thank you.
I think you made some friends.
How
Really.
did I do? Yeah, how did I do on time? Do I have any more time? Is it?
You got about 50 seconds.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Thank you so much for listening. My mother died on May 5th, which is 2 days from now, and then there's Mother's Day. So this feels really important to me to have shared with you. And
Timing is wonderful. I'm glad you did.
thank
I
you.
like the joining of your mom's passing and also the Derby, which the racetrack and all. Yeah, that was, yeah. Come back next time, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Darlene.
Good evening, everyone. That's very hard to follow. That was really good.
Yeah, you can do it too. I've heard you before do it.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone tonight. I'm going to read something that I wrote. I've been writing a lot about my childhood memories, and so this is one of them. Upon our arrival in Puerto Rico, my first tooth fell out. I had a big gap when I smiled, and I was afraid that it was going to stay that way. Abuela tried soothing me with the tail of a mouse that visits and leaves coins. She told me to leave it under my pillow. She said the fairy godmother only appears to children in America. I was born in New York, so mommy was sure that I would have the best of both worlds. Puerto Rico is called the Island of Enchantment. So much for that. That first night, I could not fall asleep. I did not understand why the walls of Abuela's house was gray and dingy. The walls in the Bronx were white and the windows had curtains in them. In Puerto Rico, I had to sleep with the net to keep the mosquitoes and flying cockroaches away. The raindrops on the tin roof banged my tune. The rhythmic sound of chirping coquilles lulled me to sleep. This night, I only remember seeing an angel with the face of my father kneeled by my side. I woke in the morning to the sounds of a rooster and a pillow over my head. I did not want to get out of bed. Mommy insisted that I get up and have breakfast. I did not want to eat. There was no telling what would be dished up in a kitchen that was gray. Maybe oatmeal if I was lucky. I was not. It was my first time, though, eating café con leche and crackers. Back home, it was usually cold milk and cereal. I could not help to think it was strange to eat coffee for breakfast, but it tasted so good. At the kitchen table, Abuela asked me if the mouse stopped by last night. Quickly, I remembered I forgot my tooth under the pillow and smiled at her. Mommy said that fairy godmothers are quiet, so I would have not noticed. I ran to the room, and there on the bed was a shiny quarter. With glee, I held it in my hands and I rubbed it. Should I spend it or should I save it? Asked my inner voice. Alfie is going to be so mad, the voice went on. Alfie's my younger brother. I put the quarter in my pocket. I ran to Abuela, hugged her, and told her, hey, you have a mouse in the house. I never said anything about the fairy godmother that looked like my father visiting last night. Abuela told me there was a bodega just down the hill from the house, and that Abuelo could take me there after feeding the pigs and the chickens. If the bodega was like the stores back on the block I knew, They would be filled with penny candies, bubble gum, and Mary Janes. My sweaters and shoes were nowhere to be found. Then I suddenly realized I did not need them because it was warm. I peeked through the window in the door just to make sure that we were still not in New York. When I saw the grass in the sun, I could not open the door fast enough. It was the first time I remember feeling the earth beneath my toes and the warm breeze on my face. I immediately ran to the side of the house where my abuelo was where he was at just beyond the fence. Alfie was close behind. There I saw with my own eyes the rooster dance around the hens and flap its wings. The rooster crowed, jumped, and pecked at me, but I wasn't a hen. Abuelo shooed away and called it el macho. Looking for protection, I made sure to stay close behind him. Like a shepherd in charge of his flock, Abuelo calmly fed el macho and the hens a mix of sunflower seeds and grain. When the rooster no longer looked my way, I pulled a quarter from my pocket and showed it proudly to Abuelo. Alfie's eyes grew wide open. Abuelo stared at the both of us from the corner of his eye, and for a brief moment, I thought about what to do. Only visions of candy danced in my head. So I lunged onto Abuelo's free arm and asked him to take us to the bodega with the pretty please and sugar on top. If your abuela says it's okay, he said. I jumped up and down doing my own happy dance because I knew that it would be. I flapped my arms, puffed out my chest, and bobbed my head. This time it was the rooster who was afraid of me.
5 minutes on the dot. That's perfect. I tell you, that I had a sense of this little kid in this world that was new but familiar, and everything was so exciting and different and the same and loving, and just one giant hug. I had never been to Puerto Rico until a couple of years ago, and I didn't know what to expect, and I fell in love with it. So I want to go back tomorrow.
It's a memory of like two worlds. I was kind of straddling two worlds as a child in that experience, and it's a true story, by the way.
I figured that you nailed it. I got that sense of this newness and not, but you got them both. Yeah, way to go. Whew. Audrey, you're next. Oh, can't hear you. Can't hear you. No, you're muted. We can't hear you because you're muted, I think. Lower left.
Got it.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. Hi, Audrey.
Hi. Glad to be back.
Glad you're here.
This is from Home, which is a memoir that I've just recently published, and this is a part of a chapter. Let's see. It's giving me instructions, but it doesn't make sense. Okay. River, hills, and valley. The rivers, the hills, the valley. Those are the places where I can see my dad. First of all, driving his Plymouth on the mail route, starting off every morning with a loaded car. He left the house early to go down to the post office and sort the mail into bundles, pulled into manageable packages with a leather strap. He could reach over into the back seat and lift one into the front when the last one was delivered to the mailbox at the lane that led to the farmhouse. Then he would drive on to the next farm on straight roads of the flat plains above the valley. That was his territory. It was the place he knew, where he was most at home, where he fit in. It was the place where I liked him best. My memories are centered on our houses, all those places we moved to in the 18 years I lived at home. My dad doesn't fit into the memories of any of those houses except the last. I can remember him there, and if I work at it, can see him in the background of the other houses. The main players were Uncle Dick and Aunt Willie, Aunt Martha and her family, Aunt Hollis, who was widowed when her children, at the age of my brothers, were little kids, and Mrs. Phillips, Uncle Dick's mom, whom I loved to spend Sundays with and be read to and showered with attention. The active memories of Dad at home mostly have tension, anger, rejection, and blame attached. The clear memories to which Dad belongs are in the hills and the river and the valley. The times he just appeared at the schoolroom door and said he was going to take us with him. That meant that it was an unseasonable day in early spring when it felt like June. Steamy, sunny, warm for several days, probably following some rain, when the morel mushrooms would be popping up in his secret places. Over the river into some bottomland along a creek, probably with some old apple trees scattered among the wildflowers. We'd walk carefully, looking for those little tan sponges on stalks that came up among the dried leaves. Once we spotted one, they seemed to be everywhere. We'd pick enough to fill a brown paper grocery bag and feel elation and expectation of the supper that Mom would make that night. I can see him driving the car, sometimes even humming or singing a teasing nonsense song. We'd be going to visit Grandma or Aunt Hollis or on a trip to Peoria. He didn't hum or sing songs at home. Those memories of him at home are tied up with the reasons I left, the reasons I criticized my mother for letting him treat her the way he did, the reasons I didn't want my children to grow up under his shadow. The memories of him in the low hills along the river and the woods and the high flat fields are of another man. The memories everyone else in 3 counties had of him. They are true in the same way that the ones that we had who lived in a house with him are true.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, boy, that difficulty in loving somebody that hurts you and finding this dual person, almost the person on the delivering the mail and then the person at home. I think you captured that beautifully.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Michael.
All right, I'm here.
There you are.
Thanks, Rick.
Break a leg.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm still kind of in disbelief, but this my last poetry book, Small Sovereign, I found out on Thursday that it actually took first place in the Los Angeles Book Festival.
You're having a hell of a year.
So I want to read a short poem from this, and then I'll read a longer new poem. This is called Out of Proportion. Eliminations all around, schisms, skirmishes. Don't expect me to stand in the way. I'm small everywhere, except in my little life, where I am a clumsy giant, trying desperately not to destroy my own city. And this is a very new poem. I play clarinet in a jazz band, and this is from one of our very recent shows. Luthier's Co-op Bar and Restaurant, St. Patrick's Day, 2022. The place is deserted at 6:30 when we arrive to set up microphones and instruments on the cramped stage flanked by congas and amps, vintage guitars hanging on all the walls. Since last time they've renovated, removed the closet in the back, so we stash our cases by the parts and repair counter and our jackets in one of the 2 new booths with the red and blue table lanterns. By 7 people arrive. I'm in my brightest green t-shirt and life is good baseball cap, sitting on my German stool with our trumpeter and pianist to my left, our bassist to my right. The drums are directly behind me, making me wonder about earplugs. After a couple of sound checks and a martini for the trumpeter, we launch into Now's the Time, which also happens to be the name of our jazz combo. The notes jump off the stage into the lights that make everything else too dark to discern, except for a pair of pretty women off to the left. Stephen, the sound man, knows what he's doing. The balance is good, though I still have a bit too much of drums, which is not his fault. The applause after each tune is more than polite, as is our playing, since we are the only band tonight, extending our solos to stretch our sets and our creativity. A few times, Bill pounds the keys rhythmically, making me nearly jump off my stool. John thrums his bass to the melody line of Cheesecake, and the notes dive down close to where my soul resides. Chris is driving us with his sticks and chasing us when the two-headed train of Jay on trumpet and me on clarinet start hurtling up and down our arpeggios. When the horns come back in at the B section of Dipper Mouth Blues, Chris has to switch to two-handed samba to keep up, and the band has somehow managed to sound like 20 pieces instead of 5. A solid wall of charging music, tones and overtones, as if New Orleans suddenly came loose and was bearing down on all of us, about to capsize while the music is keeping us afloat, playing us while we play it. The energetic momentum, actual joy, an involuntary grin on my face at the end of the tune, a surprised explosion of whoops from the applauding audience who didn't know that was about to happen, that we were all about to forget ourselves, buoyed by liberation, years of discipline, an invitation, a venue, a reason to be one specific place at one moment in time.
Ta-da! Way to go. You know what, 2 things that really grabbed me. I've been to Luthier's a million times. I love the place. You got that. I mean, you nailed the description of the place. But the thing that really got me was feeling like I was in the audience and never really having been on stage to do anything like musical, except like in junior high school when I really sucked. The idea of what it's like to be there producing this really captured me. Really, like, got a sense of like how cool that is, how much time it takes to get something to make it look so easy. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you.
I think you really got that.
I was trying to recreate the atmosphere in words, which is not that easy considering that it's music and space.
Yeah, but I think you did. I think you did. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Good. Continue the good year. It's the year of Michael. I love it. Okay, Cole. Cole.
Michael, I'm so glad you gave people that boost. Now, trigger warnings, terrible things, women and girls. This poem is a few years old. It is unfortunately totally timely, and the last line needs updating. Don't try this at home. It's an unassuming flower, the pennyroyal, with small pointed lavender petals cupped by deep green leaves, a spice, a perfume, a decorative bouquet, a cup of tea, much prettier than a coat hanger. How dangerous can it be? Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, December 22nd, 1978, volume 27, number 51. Pennyroyal oil containing 85% of the volatile ketone pulegone. Case 1, November 2. 21-year-old, symptoms, nausea, dizziness, paresthesias of fingers. That means they felt like they were burning. After learning she was pregnant, patient ingested 1/4 ounce of pennyroyal oil in 4 gelatin capsules. Following hospital discharge, she had a legally induced abortion. Case 2, 24-year-old brought to ER 2 hours post-ingestion of 1/4 ounce pennyroyal oil, complained of dizziness and nausea, vomited twice, liver and renal function tests within normal limits, admitted for observation. Following hospital discharge, she had a legally induced abortion. Case 3, the patient was alleged to be 18 years old, admitted to ER in semi-comatose state 2 hours post-ingestion of 1 ounce pennyroyal oil. Per friends, patient had severe bouts of depression from the time of last menses, had reportedly talked of suicide. Presentation, afebrile, vital signs normal, rash, diffuse abdominal pain on palpation noted, multiple episodes of hematemesis while in ER. That means she vomited blood. Day 2, coagulation abnormalities manifested by vaginal bleeding, epistaxis, scleral hemorrhages, bleeding in her eyes. Given fresh frozen plasma and platelet concentrates. Day 3, bilateral pulmonary infiltrates noted, intubation required, patient lapsed into a coma. Day 6, unresponsive to verbal or painful stimuli. They called her name. They poked at her. Hepatic encephalopathy suspected. Day 7, patient expired, secondary to cardiopulmonary arrests. Preliminary autopsy findings, massive hepatic necrosis, 4,000 milliliters of fluid in the peritoneal cavity, the amount in a gallon of milk. Bilateral pulmonary congestion with extensive consolidation instead of air. ToxNet, puligone, human toxicity values, ingestion of greater than 1.5 milliliters. Severe toxicity requires symptomatic and supportive care, though if there is concern for hepatotoxicity, administration of N-acetylcysteine is also appropriate. You can get this at a store, but you probably can't swallow enough. Consider activated charcoal if the overdose is recent, the patient is not vomiting, and is able to maintain an airway. Keep this on hand. Antidote. There is no proven antidote for pennyroyal oil toxicity, but since there are studies showing hepatotoxicity might be mediated through glutathione depletion and acetylcysteine in similar doses as administered for acetaminophen toxicity has been given to patients with pennyroyal oil toxicity. Disclaimer: those with liver failure may ultimately require liver transplant. Note to residents of Alabama, Missouri, Ohio, Georgia, Kentucky, Utah, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Plan ahead.
Oh, boy.
I don't know where I'm at for time or where people are at for their endurance.
You had 15 seconds left.
Okay.
What a hell of a day, huh? You captured it. You wrapped it up in a bow, and I don't have any words. I saw last night when the announcement had happened, and just keep thinking about it. And you really got it. You, in a very clear, painful, honest way. Need more of that. Thank you.
Take your poems from the morbidity and mortality reports. It's all
Right.
there.
I'm glad you were here to do that. Thank you. Katie.
Hi, this is my first time here. What an amazing open mic this is. I'm a friend of Rebecca's from school, and I'm really looking forward to her reading tonight. I have just one poem. It's called "What I Am Telling You, Jessica, is that those chickens are fine. You say that a poem that contains a fox and a hen house must at some point include a slaughtered chicken, that the rifle on the mantle must go off in Act 3. What I am telling you, though, is that my neighbor has built his coop to last and surrounded it with a sturdy double fence of chicken wire, and that the fox is out of luck this time. I know that good news for the chickens is bad news for some vole or field mouse or hapless house cat. So maybe all I've done is point that gun in another direction or into another poem. But this is a poem in which no chickens will die. The fox will discover the trampoline behind the house next door, and with it, the wonder of flight. Everyone I love will live and call me after supper to say goodnight. My neighbor is a good man, a minor god who has brought forth a paradise for chickens. And I know that those chickens, clucking and pecking contentedly in their self-important obliviousness, are too foolish to be a metaphor for hope. Though isn't hope always foolish? But in this poem, the chickens stand for joy, for feed scattered with a free hand and fresh water in the trough, for a swept house and a warm nest and the sun and the breeze and friends to admire your glorious feathered self and this single glorious day. And we're in it pretty deep now, aren't we? Speculating about the inner life of chickens. But can you doubt, watching them, watching us, that they have one? That they too understand the urgency of this still and incandescent moment that is here and leaving already? I know it's not always this way. The gun goes off eventually. One night the latch will fail to catch, or a hinge will rust through, and the fox will bring terror and death, as foxes do. Every story ends with a corpse. But Jessica, it is not Act 3 yet. My neighbor, the chickens, the fox, you, me, we love what we love for as long as we can. Right now, in this blue and breathing hour that shines inside us all, those chickens are fine.
I love it. Oh, you hit mortality right in the head. Big question. Where you been at, as my grandfather would say?
I'm on the other side of the state.
Oh, hell, we're on Zoom. There is no other side of the state. So if you're ever going to get out this way and do some live stuff.
This is an amazing open mic. This is incredible.
It's the best ever. Just go ahead and say it. Say it. It's the best ever.
It's the best I've been to. Yes.
There you go. You're right. Okay. And last but not least, Stephen. Keep going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I debated a little bit whether to read something newer and shorter, but I decided that I'd go ahead and read from The Third Time's the Charm. So these are my first two novelettes. This has been serialized by Water Dragon Publishing. There are going to be 7 altogether with a couple of side stories. The first 2 are out and the next one will come out in June. So this is about a character, Revan, who's a young man from a poor mining town. He's pulled himself up by his bootstraps to become the student apprentice of a law professor, but then everything goes wrong. Their airship is captured by pirates. Revan loses his mentor. Born female, Revan must make his way in a world oriented toward men while he struggles with his own identity. Set against the backdrop of a war between island nations, Revan must navigate a world divided between the aristocracy and the common people. And as a promising young man, he must choose whom to align himself with and to serve. But what does Revan's heart say? In this first excerpt, Revan has just set fire to and escaped from the pirates' airship, which had taken over the airship in which Revan was traveling. And this is the first time that the title is referring to. The flames burst through the skin of the craft. It began to collapse in the middle, dragging the Madeline toward the flames. Will suddenly appeared and, taking a sword from a dumbfounded guard, began hacking at the ropes holding the 2 craft together. The 2 ships separated, and with a tremendous roar, the burning aircraft fell away. The Madeline was thrown violently to one side, and everyone ended up in a tangle on the deck. Revan realized his arms were being held. Will turned toward him, his face purple with rage. "You've cost me my ship, boy," he shouted, gesturing at him with the sword, "and you've done for us all." "It's no worse than you were going to do to me," Revan shouted back into his face, too angry to be afraid. "To all of us." Will mastered himself and gestured to his men. "Bring him along." He walked back along the gangway to the hold and clapped Grip on the shoulder. Well done, Grip. You cut the one and I cut the other. But if there was ever a time we needed your skill, it's now. I will. The wind is picking up already. Will turned to Revan, indicating him with his sword. You there, take me to your cabin. I want a word with you. Revan led him back to the cramped cabin and took his seat. The cabin was a wreck. The professor's trunk sat open and the seat torn apart. Will glanced in the trunk and noted where Revan had cut through the back of the cabin. Then he closed the professor's trunk and sat down upon it. You're resourceful, lad, and bold, and you're a man of learning? I can read. I was apprenticed to Professor Dirge, who'd been hired by the Duke of Havelock to teach law at the new university. Professor Dirge, eh? A lawyer. A face worse than death for a man like you. Will replied with a wink. Revan didn't laugh. Or a woman, eh? Will's revelation felt like a knife through Revan's guts. Will stood up and turned away. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a rumble of thunder. Aye, you're not the first I've seen. The professor's eyesight was none too good, I'll wager. What gave me away, Revan whispered. When I gave you a hand up earlier, I could see your chest bindings through your shirt. Once I knew what to look for, it wasn't too hard to tell. You can't imagine what it's like growing up in the duchies for a woman, Revan said bitterly. No choices, no opportunities, no chance to go anywhere or do anything or be anyone. You're talking to a pirate. Every mother's son of us has a story just like that, though I'll admit that what you say goes double for a woman, Will said. But the real question is, are you a woman pretending to be a man, or are you a man in a woman's body? I don't know. It matters not to me, Will said. Boy you are and boy you shall remain. But I saw right off that you were going to be trouble. I says to myself, let's pitch this one through the hatch before he does you a turn, but I didn't. He turned and looked Revan in the eye. I can always use one such as yourself on my side. We'll all have to work together now just to stay alive. But when we reach the end, you'll think about what I've said. The wind was picking up and the back wall of the cabin began to flap. Will went out to supervise and the men trying to tack up some fabric over the hole where they'd cut into the Madeline. Rain was beginning to fall, a light pattering at first, and then heavier drops. Revan sat and then stood and then paced. Lightning flashed again, and then the storm hit.
You're going to have one hell of an audience for this. I'm serious. I think many sales. So this is out now?
Yep, the first two novelettes are out. They're being published as 10,000 word novelettes, basically. There'll be 7 of them all together with 2 side stories that tell some of the backstory, but where Revan isn't there yet. And so they're.
Where can people buy this?
I just put the link in the chat. You can find it anywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, your local bookstore, maybe. But if you go to Water Dragon Publishing, if you want, you're welcome to get a signed edition.
Even better. Hey, thank you very much. What a nice way to end the thing.
Yes, thank you very much. This has been great.
Hey, I want to say before we continue, on May 19th, just a couple weeks from now, Jacqueline's going to be giving a talk at 6:45 to 7:45 at the Longmeadow Adult Center, where Michael Goldman was a couple weeks ago. It's a really comfortable place. It's brand new, and trying to get as many people as we can to come down there for that. So now I'm going to hand it over back to Jacqueline. Hi.
Hey.
Good shot. Good show tonight, huh?
Oh my gosh. You know, given the readings that we had tonight, you could see why having a break after this was so important when we were all together. It's, you know, not only is it a chance for all of us to kind of take a breath, but it's a chance for us to, you know, say a few words, to introduce ourselves to somebody we've never met before, to get a chance to ask somebody, do you have anything else that I can read? But that is for a later time. We have the chat for that. But next month we're in person, and we can do that again. So I would like to introduce our featured reader, Rebecca Olander, who I was just with on the radio this morning. Rebecca has been with Straw Dogs from the very beginning. Her writing and collaborations have appeared recently in Bracken, Jet Fuel Review, Massachusetts Review, Tinderbox, Tiny Spoon, and others. Her books include a chapbook, Dressing the Wounds, in 2019. And her most recent book that came out last year, Uncertain Acrobats. And I can't wait to hear some of these things. I remember reading Steve Farr's review of your book, and it was a terrific review in the Gazette, just a beautiful review. Rebecca teaches at Westfield State and in the Maslow Family Graduate Program in Creative Writing at Wilkes University. She also happens to be the editor-director of Perusia Press. After Rebecca reads, we are totally free to ask her questions, make her tell us more about her life and her writing, and then we'll have just a few minutes for announcements at the end. Please welcome Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm embarrassed to ask you. I'm usually really amazing at timing my readings and having just the right amount of time. But when would you like me to wrap up to have a Q&A? Because I wasn't sure if you wanted to have a conversation throughout or save a little time at the end. And I really do want to talk to everyone.
Yeah, well, we'd love the conversation in between, talking with us about your process in between. But if you have about 25 minutes for us and then save time for questions, that would be terrific.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That helps me. And it's 8 on the dot. So welcome, everyone. That was amazing. It is the best open mic. And I was doing a little trip through memory lane, thinking about my Straw Dog connections. So I was a founding member, was so excited about the idea of there being a Straw Dog Writers Guild. And it's meant a lot to me personally. So I just wanted to say thank you for some of the ways. I'm sure I won't even be able to capture all of them. Many of them are just in personal interactions, meeting people and talking to members. So I agree, it'll be nice to get back to that in-person time when we can do that. But I go all the way back to the first readings of this night at the 11s bar, before it was then in the basement and now online on Zoom. And I also was lucky enough to be part of the Compass Roads anthology. So if you don't know about that, you should check it out. It's on the Straw Dog site, and it's a collection of local poetry. And I know many people here are also featured in that. Poetry that's celebrating local places and areas. And I also was granted a Straw Dog residency, which was amazing. It was after this book that I'm going to read from was finished, but it helped me to do some organizing of what I hope will be my second book. And that was at Patchwork Farms. I'm so excited to see Patricia in the audience. Welcome, Patricia. It's been a long time since I've seen you. It's been a long time since all of us have seen anyone. But that was, I've never had a residency before, a granted residency, and that was just a wonderful treat. And things like having discussions about like writing from a place of more inclusion and diversity and thinking about voices and identities. Those are all things that have been brought up in Straw Dogs conversations and workshops. Let's see, the Patricia Smith event, and I'm trying to think where it was, at Gateway City Arts. That was the Abel Maripol Social Justice Award. She was the first recipient, and that event knocked my socks off. It was just amazing. And now there's this fellowship for emerging writers of color, and it's been a wonderful bridge for Perusia Press. We had Amina Jordan Mendez. I met her through Nicole Young and having that Straw Dog, having that fellowship, and invited her to read with Patricia Smith and a Perusia poet, Lynn Thompson, at Westfield State, where I teach. So there's all this cross-pollination and community. Community is the big word that sticks with me. So thank you everyone for all the parts you are of this organization. So I'm reading primarily from Uncertain Acrobats. I might, if I have enough time, I might read a little something else. I definitely resonate with what folks are reading tonight. This is a book that's about my father. He died, it will be 10 years in December, which is incredible to me. 2012. And the book is in 3 parts. It's loosely about my father's life and my life with him, our relationship in the first section. The second section is his dying, and the third section is my grief. Roughly speaking, some of that spills into the other parts because grief and death are messy, as we know. So that happens a little bit. I'm going to start with the first actual poem in the book. There's a proem, but I'm going to start with Tick Seed. And can everyone hear me all right? Okay, excellent, thank you. Tick Seed. Coreopsis, little yellow explosions, abundant and obvious as sunshine. So why the evening nickname, moonbeam, misnomer in my book, conjuring bars of evening white light, outer space, shallow graves. These are weedy, the greenery cut out for the side of the road and hardy, like little stalks of pine. Mine came from my grandmother's garden, but not the house my father grew up in, where St. Francis stood, waiting for wild rabbits and yard birds, his concrete skirts always empty of crumbs. She divided these from the strip outside her later apartment, from after my grandfather died and Jason, the dog. This, the home of what was left after the house sold, of favorite things and of anything that would grow in a garden full of stones. Leaves like needles, I'm sorry, I need water. Leaves like needles, drought tolerant, rabbit resistant. Give me winter, you patch of yellow fever, you loosed sachet of December forest. I cannot cotton your tiny joys multiplied, creating a cheery thicket year by year, nor your other name, because your seeds look like those tiny insects I fear and have grown vigilant about, how you suck me back to a time when everything was alive. It seems like I'm making myself cry with my own poem, but that wasn't what was happening. I don't know what was happening. I hope I can stay here with you all. The next poem, and speaking of being with you all, I try to pick things that I haven't read all together. I have a couple of things I haven't read yet from the book, and I definitely tried to mix it up from, I was lucky enough to read in the fall for the other Straw Dog Hilltown's reading. So if you're here, I see some of you are here, and I think there's only one poem that's a repeat. This is a form poem. It's a paradel, which comes from villanelle and parody. It's a form that was created by Billy Collins, kind of as a joke, but I had fun with it. And my father once wrote one for my stepmother. So that's where I first heard of it. This is called Adirondack Paradel. The Adirondacks were a place I spent time with my dad and my grandparents when I was little. And the form is, I'll show you on the page what it looks like. So it's 4 stanzas, and they are 6 lines each. And for each stanza, the first line and the second line are the same. The third and the fourth are the same. The fifth and the sixth use all of the words that were used in the first and third line. So there's a repeated line, another repeated line, and then the fifth and sixth gather all those words and only those words and use them. And then that happens for 3 stanzas, and then the last stanza uses each poem that's used, each word that's used in the poem only once. Adirondack Paradel. I perform the summer rituals in my octopus bathing suit. I perform the summer rituals in my octopus bathing suit, wearing 6 of Grandpa's sun hats at a time for fun. Wearing 6 of Grandpa's sun hats at a time for fun. Wearing a suit of hats, I perform for fun, Grandpa's son. Bathing in time, rituals, octopus my summer at 6. My head, a tower in terry cloth, I hold apples with my skirt for the deer.
My head, a tower in terry cloth. I hold apples with my skirt for the deer. Pregnant sounds of coins slivering in the soda machine and of rain. Pregnant sounds of coins slivering in the soda machine and of rain. I skirt the rain in my terry cloth, hold a tower of coins for soda, my head pregnant with sounds of deer and apples in the slivering machine. Grandma waits under clouds on the musty planked cottage porch. Grandma waits under clouds on the musty planked cottage porch, near the hummingbird sugar water in a white tennis outfit and Keds. Near the hummingbird sugar water in a white tennis outfit and Keds. The musty Keds and tennis white grandma outfit the cottage. Sugar waits under water in clouds on a planked porch. Hummingbird near. Grandma in clouds of tennis white. Grandpa's outfit terry cloth. I water. The hummingbird with the octopus bathing in the musty hold of summer rituals. Pregnant deer perform for my sugar and apples. I for coins and soda. At 6, wearing a fun suit under my skirt, Keds, hats in a tower. Near the planked cottage porch, slivering in the sun. My head, a time machine, waits on sounds of rain. This poem is called Brown Penny. It has a couple of lines from a Yeats poem, and it was a poem that was used in the program for my father and stepmother's wedding when I was 7. Brown Penny. In a picture from my father's wedding, I loll on my grandmother's fur coat, hair mingling with pelt. For the ceremony, I wore a pink skirted dress with a white bodice, spray of flowers across the front. I kept asking when it would be time for cake. I was 7 already with my own wedding dreams centered on dresses and desserts. A Yeats poem was printed in the program. Go and love, young man, if the lady be young and fair. It was 1979, March, the year of the sheep. My dad was 34. Wasn't he old? Wasn't his new wife old too? One cannot begin it too soon. But hadn't he begun love with my mother before I was even born? And though the poem read, I am looped in the loops of her hair, would I remain his girl? And of course, I know my dad was not old now, but when I read that poem, sometimes I have read that one before, and I've had people say in the chat, your dad wasn't old, what are you saying? I know. I turned 50 the month this book came out, so I know something about age now. I'm going to read a poem called Lilac Sundays. I don't know if any of you have been to the Arnold Arboretum in Boston, in Cambridge, but it's a place I went when I would spend weekends with my dad. We would go on family outings, he called them. And one of the places we would go was the Arnold Arboretum and also Mount Auburn Cemetery, which comes up in this poem. And I wanted to read this because it's May and it's almost that time for this to happen. Lilac Sundays. Oh, and just a little story about this poem. I wrote this poem for the book. We can talk more about the making of the book later if that comes up in questions, but this was one that was written toward the making of this as a book. Lilac Sundays. On weekends over the years, our family went to the annual flowering at the Arnold Arboretum, where panicles of blossoms in mid-May were at their height, bunches of corollas dripping from boughs in that sanctuary for trees. We'd spread our checked cloth and picnic in a cloud of sweetness and bees, that there could be an arboretum, that there could be that many different shades of purple. These outings showed me that and the names for birds and their calls, as other days we'd walk Mount Auburn Cemetery with binoculars and quartered peanut butter and jellies. That a cemetery could be a place for life, that we could go pioneering through a yard of graves and see beauty in the markers, that we could scan branches for flickering feathers, follow a dash of red or blue across the sky to find where it landed, waiting there with eyes trained on the greenery until it flew again. We took out the battered Peterson and went looking through its pages for what revealed itself in the air. This taught me patience, to look around and to try to name what was singing there. This is a poem I haven't read before. It's called My Aesop, and my dad was into fables. And this comes from when I was younger. I had to, at one point in my life, ask him to hug me more. My mom was very affectionate, and I felt physically very much her love for me. And my dad was of a certain generation and was my dad and didn't spend all the days with me. And so it made me question, it made me feel like he was cold, and it made me question if he loved me. And my mom urged me, just ask him for what you need. So this speaks to a feeling that for some time of my life, I thought it was, I sort of was upset that I had to ask him for that. But in writing about this, it helped me to realize that, as the poem says, that wasn't the lesson. So I'll let you hear that in the poem. My Aesop, it goes like this. Father Bear was gone. Mother Bear was the one entering through the swinging door. Surprise, a blazing cake in her paws. When he was in the story, he wore a vest and a very smart hat. He smoked a pipe and laughed a deep huff of a laugh. As a cub, I asked him to please hug me more. Could his distance mean he didn't care, since Mother Bear cradled me close in our den? Little Ursula, I wore my heart on my fur. Once a yearling, newly on my own, I circled the familiar territory of that wound, as if he hadn't offered a remedy. That wasn't the lesson. When I asked, he answered. Pride set aside the ways of his kind. He wrapped his shaggy arms around me and held on. And this is a poem I wasn't going to read, but Sue, when you read about your mom and what was on the television when she was dying, I wanted to read this for you. This is called Josephine Grace. A lobe of lung, the plan, but he took it all, that German surgeon, who told us afterward that it had gone well, but that of course you'd never run again. That was January 2009. From your hospital bed, we watched Obama's first inauguration, hope seeping into the room. Then rehab on the small track of living room to kitchen, then into the meadows with the loons and herons, eventually a marathon walk, a mile-long run, so you proved him wrong. Then 4 years laced with travels, Tarsiva, and gratitude. When the cancer returned, it took you in 7 weeks. December 2012, we saw Sandy Hook unfold on the news in your room at Mass General. We buried you in the back of a cemetery named for a saint, your only neighbor in that expanse, a little girl from Newtown. whose family moved north after the shooting. She was autistic and could never speak, putting your lost voice into perspective. She turned 7 3 days before she was killed, and you'd turned 68 a few days before that. She helped me be glad for the length of your life. Another place we went with my dad on family outings was Great Meadows. It's a Mass Audubon sanctuary, and he lived in Dorchester for a lot of my growing up. I grew up in Gloucester on the North Shore of Boston, but he moved then to Concord, Massachusetts, and right in his backyard became or was Great Meadows. So a place that we used to go for these field trips as when I was a kid. He moved and that was his backyard. Circling Great Meadows. Over muddied paths rimed with ice, hard black stars of water chestnut pods, ornaments of invasion, smother the marsh with their dark beauty. At a small bridge over a diminished stream, we cross the worn slats and feel the wood bend beneath us, supple compared to the hardening ground. Surfaces dismay, unknowable country, unknowable me, unknowable you. Our story is mapped in tree bark, but when it peels away, what will be left? For now, the heart still beats beside the steadfast lung untwinned, a body unmanned, unmoored, untethered, unabashed at all its wanting. A raft of ducks moons are passing, rear feathers pointing toward diluted wintry sky, bills full of water and weeds. How many mouths gasped then for final breaths, for first breaths? And what is the difference between a question with no answer and a question never asked? I'm going to drop one that I was going to read. I'm going to read, this one is the first poem of the third section. It's called Fool's Gold. Fool's Gold. You fly at me, lurching memory, trapeze artist, my pendulum. This swing dance, a trap, the way summer slips into fall with ease. Sometimes it hurts too much. It's a shallow river and I'm panning for pyrite. Walking, I allow myself to imagine you there under branches slung low. On every hike, I anticipate you at the top of the mountain, pain a pack horse, I learn, foot in the stirrup, then the mount, grasping saddle horn like a novice, counting slowly to 10 before pulling back gently on the reins. This triangle, you, me, and the model-winged messenger with the angle that sorrow can't be shunned, a swooping scavenger gull leaking cries as steam hisses from a broken radiator. In your icy absence, the sun keeps trying to radiate. There's no forgetting. Something was dislodged and tore. And I think I'll just read 2 more. I know we're getting close to the 25-minute mark. These are the last 2 poems in the book. The acolyte at my door asks me, how do you pray? It's always too late, and when I'm afraid. I never remember to prune before the frost or to thank heaven for small favors, though I didn't forget to stitch the way my father cared for me into the fabric of how I understand love. A person can die of not being regarded inside, in the important places. If the inverse is true, am I immortal? Is he? Should we wish to be? Around the house, relentless lilies of the valley, which I sought, planted and tended, but they bit back in spades. Do I even want this return of happiness? Years now since my father left me in the snow. His eyes were closed and he had already said his last words weeks before. He was on a path through bittersweet and myrrh, kudzu and herringbone. I want to say I understand the mysterious ways in which God moves, but I am unmoved by mystery. Father, now days go by when I don't think of you. I'm making a life without. All the clocks ticking the same songs as when you were alive. How does the world sound the same, run by its consistent engines, though everything has changed? And this last one is called Return to Great Meadows. At the gaping center of the marsh, dozers unearth the earth, upbraid invasive purple loosestrife. With choking stalks, these bog sirens trick the terrain with false beauty. Canada geese honk in tandem with low-flying planes from Hanscom Air Force Base. In the distance, a solitary loon. Closer, a scurry of chipmunks inhabits the reeds. The hollow, a screech owl once filled. Dragonflies attached end to end, pinwheels riding the wind. Scattered stones under cattails, old cairns undone. Along the watchtower, silver corners strung with the projects of spiders. A single cardinal frets between two trees. Ruddy bird, flying heart in the bush, the hue of a berry stain on yesterday's apron, monthly blood seeped into a mattress, dusky burn of forsythia at the brink of fall, rusty bloom of feminine plumage, mateless without her scarlet twin. Is she looking for him? Does the wind tell her where the owl has gone, how long the geese will clog the rushes, how fast this winter will roll in? What can she tell us who treat these meadows like a labyrinth? Or is the lesson in the bird register chalked in the script of many hands, noting green heron, nuthatches, and a redwing? What are we meant to learn from the broken rosary hanging on the welcome map, from the found feather, from the way the binocular case snaps shut with worn-in ease, from the backs of benches bearing names of the dead, or from Peterson's dog-eared pages penciled with proof of life? Do we mostly want to know we have not been left? Pocketing the heart-shaped stones pried from where they settled, we dig incremental graves. With each removal in the taking of evidence, a soothing sort of theft. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Did you say that you had a new poem?
I have a couple of golden shovels, and I was going to maybe read one of them because actually today I was another gift from Straw Dog. I was featured in their blog in the author showcase. And that was just published today. And I tried to read a couple of poems that were referenced in that, so that would resonate for folks if they read it and were here. And lately, my favorite form to write in is a golden shovel. And I thought I might read one of those.
That would be great.
That's okay to do now? Okay. All right. So these are poems you can find. They were published. I haven't published a lot. We can talk about that. The COVID, haven't been writing, haven't been sending out very much, but these were published last year. Gosh, the time of COVID too. So Jean Valentine was a poet I really loved. KT is here, and she knows Jean was a friend of Vermont College, VCFA, and came to visit us a lot while we were there. Jean Valentine died in 2020 on the same day as my dad, December 29th. And I wrote some golden shovels for her in that January, and these were published in Jet Fuel Review in a special Golden Shovel issue. And I'll just tell you what a golden shovel is quickly. It's a form poem that was created by Terrence Hayes, and it was using, he made the first one out of Gwendolyn Brooks's poem. The title is 7 Pool Players at the Golden Shovel, but it's the poem that goes, we real cool, we skip school. And so this group of kids who skip school hangs out at the Golden Shovel, this bar, playing pool. So what you do in a golden shovel is you take a line of poetry that you admire, and you deconstruct that line, and each word of that line, so the first word would be the last word of your first line. The second word would be the last word of your second line. So basically the line gets deconstructed and shows up word by word on the right-hand spine of the poem. And I'll just tell you that, let's see, I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick this one called 15. What you do is you say after your title, so Terrence Hayes would have said after Gwendolyn Brooks, I say after Jean Valentine. My poem is called 15. It was published in Jet Fuel Review, and it's for Jean Valentine's poem 18. And her line, I'll just read her line by itself so you can hear it as I read it. Her line is, green book bag full of poems. I leaned with my bicycle at the black bridge edge of the world. What was I to be lost or found? My soul in the corner stood, watched. So that's her line, and each word shows up in the right-hand side of mine. It's a little hard to explain, but you'll just hear some of those words come up as I read. 15. Another way of saying young or sapling or hapless, green, as a blade of grass among countless other grasses, book bag slung over a nonchalant shoulder, or a shoulder full of trying to be nonchalant. There on the corner of Brattle Street and Elliott, steel-toed boots laced tight, poems blooming in my heart like mute swans, like acorns. I tried to force life into them, but they wouldn't speak, leaned away from me with their long necks, their hard shells, with their meat hidden from me and any listener. But still, my feeling that they should be poems, the way learning to bicycle is something you can try but not make happen until at the last moment you don't fall, a swoop in your stomach, the arc of a dark bird rising above rooftops, black against the sky, its wingspan a kind of bridge between effort and what happens at the edge of knowledge. The stumble that wasn't, nested inside the flight that was. That was 1987. Harvard Square, the hub of cool buskers with their open cases, a bustling world within a world that I would visit and try to belong to, with what sophomoric friends I traveled there with on the train. It was summertime, our hours our own, our grasp on each eye of us inexact and blurred, to ourselves and to each other. How could I pin it to the page when to be alive and growing was such an exercise in being lost? That wobble on the curb's edge, that posture of daring or not caring or not knowing much of anything at all. Had I found myself able to look into a mirror and see myself, I would have met what is my soul, the tail end of a good dream, dissipating at the brightness in a morning window. Impossible to hold, light on the surface of a lake. A huddle by the newspaper stand on the corner, clutching our record store and thrift shop finds. We just stood there, not yet us, but trying to be, and watched.
Oh, thank you for reading that, Rebecca.
Thank you for inviting me to.
You are welcome. So I think what I would like to do now, I am going to switch over to gallery view so that we can see everybody. And I know I have some questions for you, although I have to say before I open it up to questions from other people, I love that Father Bear poem so much. I love that the protagonist became a bear, a cub of a bear. I think that just worked beautifully. So I would love to open it up if people have comments or questions for Rebecca. And if you could just put your hand up or put that little hand icon up, and I'll call on you so we don't have cacophony here. Well, while we are waiting for comments, Rebecca, I'm sorry, Kayla Ramirez.
Yeah, Kyla.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was the first time I've ever heard of or heard a Golden Shovel poem, and I really, really enjoyed hearing it, as well as the, I forget what the other form poem was called, but that was super, super neat to hear out loud, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. The other form is a paradel. I'll write it paradel in the chat, and I put the link to the Golden Shovels and also my books, if I may be so bold, in the chat as well. Thank you for that. And thank you, Jacqueline, for saying that about the bear poem, the Aesop poem. That is another poem I wrote during the process of editing the book, actually. So just as a backstory.
Would you talk a little bit about what a residency meant to you, what it felt like for people who have not been on a writing residency?
Oh my, just precious time, the granting of precious time and space. I had such a good time. I brought a stack of books to read. I sort of scheduled my time out. I mean, Patchwork Farms. I was in this little sort of turret, castle-y, treehousey type space, and you could go up to the roof and sit there. So I did all the things. I walked on the grounds, and I sat in bed a lot and read, and just bought all the special foods that I wanted to eat, and did a little of everything. So for me, I mean, everyone does a residency differently, but I read, I wrote, I submitted, I revised, I worked on a new manuscript. I just had like a whole list of things that I wanted to do. And that really worked for me, because if you don't feel like, and I kind of talk about this in the author showcase piece on the blog today, if you don't feel like doing one thing in your writing life, there's always something else to do. So if you're not feeling like the muse is visiting you, then open a book, or, read poets and writers, or read somebody, read one of your friends' pieces online, or submit something, or make a plan, take a walk. Just like so many things can feed your writing life. And so that for me, I had each part of it. I did a smattering of things, and it worked for me. And it was just such a gift. When it's granted to you, there's this feeling like you I don't know, like you deserve this or something like that. Like it's hard to feel like, I don't know, when you work really hard, sometimes when you're a mom, which I am, although this was after my kids were older, it's hard to feel like you're allowed, to go away and like invest this time in your writing life. And I did that for a low residency program with VCFA. And this was like the first time I got to go away again after that. And that was always really special too. Yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And could you talk a little bit about Perugia Press?
Oh, thank you. Sure. Well, I'm very proud to be the editor director of Perugia. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary, so that's exciting. And I have not been around since the founding of the press, but I came on at the occasion of the 20th anniversary. And we are a small feminist press that publishes first and second books by women poets. So it's a very specific mission. We publish one book a year as well. And that book is the winner of our annual national contest. So we're based in Florence. So in a way, we're local, but we're also a national press. So we've published poets from all over. One of our first poets we published is Janet Alfs, who's in the room tonight. We're a nonprofit, and we run, speaking of community that I was talking about earlier, we run on the fuel of community. So we have a large volunteer team of readers, a bunch of folks in the room. Let's see, Beth and Finn and Deborah, I think, is going to do this next year. KT, and I'm just going through my little list. Patricia has been, so all of these folks I'm naming, Susan Tyler, and I think even more people who were here, Stephanie, have read for the press, so have been volunteer readers, and we have readers and judges and do a very collaborative model, and it takes a village to pick a poetry book that's going to win your prize. So that's a little bit. I mean, we do more than that. We're not as multifaceted as Straw Dog, but we have
how
a
do you
blog.
spell that?
Oh, Perugia. I'll put it in the chat. Perugia Press, and I will put our website there too. We have a blog that features Black, Indigenous, women of color who are also emerging poets once a month. So we're trying to use our platform to get the word out about emerging women poets, and like beyond just the poets we publish, because we only can publish one a year. And yeah, that's our website there. So would love to have you check us out. And if folks are interested in reading for the press, let me know, because it's a wonderful opportunity. It's definitely a beautiful literary citizen thing to do. You learn so much about, you're reading manuscripts that are submitted for the contest, and you just learn so much about the ordering of your own work in a manuscript form, and just all the different ways that people can express themselves in a book length piece. So I recommend it. I did that for 7 years before I took the press over as director. Helped my work a lot.
Great, thank you. Stephanie, I see a little hand by your name. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I can't get my video to work. Yes, okay. No, I was just telling Rebecca that I was one of the readers for the press. And well, since I have the attention of the group, I really just want to say that her book is as amazing as the sample of poetry that she read tonight suggests. I have it. I read one poem a night before bed. And each one is just so powerful and moving and well written, well crafted. So I highly recommend it.
Oh, thank you, my friend. That's so nice. And thank you for being part of the Perugia community as well.
My pleasure.
Janet, did you have something?
Yes. The whole group reading was completely beautiful. And Becky, I just again, I've heard you read from this book, and I've read this book, and I'm just so struck by the generosity of it, how much life there is in basically what's a book about grieving. It's completely generous, as you are, and I was very struck by how painterly it is. So I just wanted to kind of, there's so much visual richness. I mean, I was noticing all of the senses and kind of really feeling that the weaving of all of the senses in your poems, just very balanced in a way, a lot of movement. And but I really felt the painterliness. So I don't know if you, do you also do visual arts? I don't know that about you, but
thank you, Janet. I mean, that means a lot coming from you, because you blend the senses in your work and with your movement. And so thank you. That's really kind. I do collage, and sometimes I do that in collaboration with writing. I used to say I have a writing partner, and she and I haven't haven't been writing together. I mean, we didn't have a breakup or anything. We just both teach, full-time composition. So we don't have a lot of time to create together. But we had a really fun project where I would make a collage and send it to her, and she would make a collage and send it to me, and then we would write a poem in response to the collages. And so it was like an exchange. And so that's one thing that I like to do. But thank you. That means a lot.
That's a beautiful idea. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I cannot say enough about collaborating with other people. And I mean, translation is an example of it. Ekphrasis is an example of that, totally Sue, like ekphrasis. I mean, you're collaborating with somebody who made a painting, or I love to do that. And then just creating projects with a friend. It's so fruitful. And I hadn't ever done that before Vermont College. So another gift from VCFA, the idea of collaboration, and very much in that is the idea of play and enjoying yourself and what you're doing and your creativity. And, it gets so serious when you're thinking about publishing poems and each word and your commas and whatever. And we can just get so serious about it. And there's so much rejection and everything, of course, if you're trying to put your stuff in the world. So it's really nice to remember what's fun and playful and joyful about creating, and really, really nice to do that with someone else.
Well, that really comes through. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Rebecca?
Oh, Sue has a beautiful comment in the chat.
Okay.
Amazing. All of my poems are ekphrastic. Each one has a corresponding photo of me, my mother, or us together. That is beautiful. Sue, when is your book coming into the world? You said you're writing toward 55 poems, right, to be included?
Yeah, 55. I have about 11 finished, and then I've got about 35 started. And so it's going to be a while, but it's a slow process. I worked hard on it, and then I sort of reached a plateau, and I really couldn't do anymore for a while, and I'm sort of getting back there. But I loved your poetry. Just so, I don't know, like it is very painterly, very visual. And thank you for reading the poem about, your dad. And it's amazing. You remember these things.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you as well. Mutual admiration for all the readers. Again, best open mic ever.
Well, before we fully thank Rebecca, are there any announcements of things coming up? Becky, do we have an announcement?
Well, I just want to say Darlene has her hand up, and so maybe you could let her, it's hard to see in the corner of her.
Yeah, I can't see her. But
no one puts Darlene in a corner. We see you, Darlene.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed your poetry in regards to the childhood memories. It's something that I like to do a lot. I just think that it's a time of innocence where you're not tainted, your view's not tainted, there's raw emotion there. So I really enjoyed that, and thank you for sharing. I'm trying to remember though, I'm wondering where I've seen or met you before. Did you have a recent workshop in regards to publishing a month ago, 2 months ago? Was it free?
No, I had a very expensive one though, very exclusive. No, I didn't have one.
For some reason, you seem very familiar to me. And then the next question I wanted to ask is, are you doing any teaching outside of the college?
You're so kind. So Darlene, I want to say I had the same exact feeling about you. Well, and for two reasons. One, I liked your childhood work, but also I thought you were familiar. So we'll figure it out. We're gonna have to think about it. It's not our imaginations.
Okay, good.
I don't have any upcoming things. I am a hard worker, and there's not a lot of room for my own work, but I do teach full-time at Westfield State, and I get to teach creative writing and poetry sometimes. This fall I'm teaching creative writing, but also with that and running the press, I don't get to do a whole lot else. I have just started doing this low residency Maslow graduate program, and it's just like dipping in here and there and reading like a couple of, they don't have very many poets. So I just read a couple of like the master's thesis of these folks, and that's kind of a one-off thing. And that's outside of my work at Westfield. But yeah, I mean, the dream is someday maybe to have writing workshops and things like that, and you know, slow down a little bit with the teaching and have a little bit more time for my own writing. So we'll see.
So
stay tuned.
The Perugia Press thing, you talked about diversity, and you have I guess a group that's diverse. I do a lot of writing of poetry in Spanish, and I really haven't found anybody that can edit my work in Spanish without a significant cost or charge associated with that. And I think I had asked in a prior group resources in regards to that and publishing resources, and I really didn't get much feedback from that. What would you say as far as diverse resources?
That's a great question. I mean, having poetry in multilingual expressions is really exciting to me. We have, in our last couple of books that we've published, the last one has a series of poems in Mohegan and English. And then the one before that has some poems that it's written by a Mexican-American poet who is not bilingual. And she does a lot of exploring of that sort of tension of like, what does it mean to be Mexican and not know the language? And so she's kind of teaching herself. So she has some Spanish lesson definition poems in that book, where the title is a Spanish word, but she defines it for herself through her poem. So those, I mean, that's something that I really care about and I'm excited about. And I actually talk about this in the Straw Dog Author Showcase. So about linguistic diversity. And but in terms of resources, nothing comes right into my mind, but I'm happy to think about that and, you know, converse with you. And then we can, you know, I'll put my email in the chat, and we can figure out where we know each other from. And if I think of something, I'll let you know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Darlene, Magdalena Gomez is going to be our featured reader next month, and she may have some resources for you. I just have a feeling that might work.
That's a great idea. And she's reading with Janet coming up for Janet's book launch. Just shout out to Janet's new book. So yeah, there's my email. I'm happy to talk to anyone if folks are interested in reading for the press, or want to order my book through me but don't have Venmo, or just want to say hi or whatever. Don't be shy.
And I just saw Cole's hand up. Now I don't see you. Cole, are you there? No. Okay. Oh, right. We are going. Yes. Becky.
Well, there are three of us with our hands up. So Janet has her hand up, and Michael, and we all have our electronic hands up.
So hard to see the electronic hands. Okay. Michael.
This is just if you're doing announcements. If you're not doing.
Yes.
Okay, great. So tomorrow night I'm giving a translation talk online. It'll be live on Facebook, and there's also going to be a Zoom link too, but it's about translating Tove Ditlevsen, the Copenhagen trilogy and The Trouble with Happiness. So that's tomorrow night at 6:30. And then this Saturday is a poetry workshop I run twice a month. There are actually still a couple spots if you want to try and get in at the last minute. It's Saturday at 1, and that's co-sponsored by Straw Dog and the Center for the Arts, Northampton Center for the Arts. So that's all.
Great, thank you. Janet.
Yeah, I just wanted for Darlene, your question about resources and multilingual poetry practice writing. Maria Luisa Arroyo, who I'm doing the celebration reading for my new book. I'm doing a reading with her. She talks a lot about code switching and using languages, multiple languages in poems. And I also do movement and poems together. So we are yeah, just encouraging people. You might want to contact her too, because she does a lot with Spanish language poetry.
Thank you so much.
And Becky.
So three things. So I just say that tonight during this time, we took in $2,150. And many of you gave either tonight or earlier. So thank you all for donations and new memberships, a few of you. And so just welcome. On Saturday, May 21st, the program committee is having its first in-person event in a couple of years, and that's with Ron Welburn on Saturday, 10:30 to 12. He's a poet, and it's a program that we had tried to do a year and a half ago, and it got, with technical glitches, got sort of cut off. So that's happening on the 21st in person. If you register with us, it's not required, but if you register, I would send you a downloaded copy of the downloaded poems that he's going to be looking at. And then on Wednesday evening, June 15th, is going to be the annual Voices for Resistance. That's going to be a virtual event, and I believe it's at 7 o'clock. And you can register through the Straw Dog website.
Great, thank you. Rick.
Yeah, two things. Becky, so what's the total number we have, including the $5,000?
Oh, including the $5,000 matching, it's $10,580, and it's 45 individuals have contributed so far, plus the anonymous donor.
Terrific. Way to go.
And I'll just say donations have ranged from $10 to $1,000, and all of them in between are so totally welcome and appreciated.
Terrific. Yeah, I also want to say that the Straw Dog Writers Guild, in collaboration with the Alumno Adult Center, which I just mentioned at the beginning of the night, is having its second second event, which is Jacqueline Sheehan's going to be the reader at 6:45 to 7:45 on May 19th. It's a Thursday. It's a terrific place, and Michael killed it last time, and Jacqueline's going to kill it this time. Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thank you. And I think the last announcement is next month, come to Writers Night Out at Michelson Gallery. We are going live. If you're not quite ready to go into group settings yet, please wear a mask if you feel more comfortable wearing a mask. One great thing about Michelson's Gallery is the ceilings are just huge. It's almost like 3 stories, and they have an air circulation system that they turn on specifically in light of COVID. So I think we've got all precautions in place, and it will be so wonderful to see everybody in person. Magdalena Gomez will be there, and she's one of the first performer, poet, artists who I ran into in Northampton when I first moved here, and she's just dynamite, totally dynamite. So what I'd like to do is have everybody unmute, and we can thank Rebecca, because Rebecca, that was fantastic. So thank you.
Yay! Thank you, everyone. Right back to you. That was an amazing open mic.